Hey everyone, this is Cameron from Renegade Animation on renegadepopculture.com. If you like what we do, please give us a like, a follow, and a rating on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to us. We are everywhere. If you can, consider supporting our Patreon. That way we can keep doing what we love, and that's talking about the wild world of animation. And now, on with the show.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Renegade Animation on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host for this evening. Joining me, as always, is the animation guru himself, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy.
And we're still catching up with some 2024 stuff. We've got reviews for Invincible Fight Girl and picking up where we left off with Creature Commandos. But first, let's talk about Invincible Fight Girl.
So, this was and is so far one of the last original animated shows that Cartoon Network greenlit right before David Zaslav said, "Oh, I hate everything artistic and it's not making me money fast enough." This show, created by Justin Gordon Montgomery, is one of the rare survivors of the Zaslav merger and his honestly very murderous hands of how he runs Warner Brothers Discovery. I will say a weird story about this show. When I was at Animation is Film, they played the first episode for us on the big screen. It was really cool. There was supposed to be a Q&A of the creator talking about the show and such, but all we got was the first episode, and that was it. We were in and out after 24 minutes.
Wow.
And there was no Q&A. The creator basically said in a very not haunting but very yeah, this was incredibly hard to make and produce in the current time period that we are in. So I hope y'all like it. And it set a very weird tone when we finally sat down and watched the show. And it was a good first impression. I enjoyed it. But something tells me, and this is just assumption, don't take this as gospel or fact. Something must have gone on behind the scenes. And until we hear otherwise, I wonder if we will see more after this 10 episode season. And I hope we do, because even though it was a latecomer to the overall year of 2024 animation, a year that felt already very light, it's good. It's a fun combination of anime and wrestling. Mike, what did you think about this overall show before we really dive into the weeds?
Overall, I really like this. I never could figure out where the story was going, and that's a good thing because these characters are very well defined, and it really did feel like a lot of the action shows that we grew up with, combined with like a lot of anime influence and, the wrestling angle and all of that. This impressed me quite a bit.
So it's about a young girl named Andy living in the wrestling world who wants to become the best pro wrestler ever. Very Shonen Jump action teen series inspiration. It is very funny though that our main character lives on Accountant Island. And first of all, there are so many funny background jokes in this show. One of my favorites is in the first episode where you see a sheep herder herding office chairs. The fact that their biggest patrons are from the wrestling world and how you get bottlenecked into working at the Academy of Accountants. And there's just a lot of fun. It's like the polar opposite of wrestling. And then of course, it does a lot of the whole anime stuff where if you want to wrestle, you can wrestle at any time because there are apparently thousands of satellites ready to launch a wrestling ring into whatever location the fight is taking place, which I thought was very funny because it just seems like, what if someone said, "Hey, you want to wrestle?" as a joke, and then they just both get crushed by a wrestling ring falling on top of them through misunderstanding and antics. Andy ends up winning her first wrestling match and convincing her parents to let her go to like the world of wrestling to become one. And from there, I will say that even though this show is a mixture of both wrestling and anime, at first I thought it leaned maybe a bit too much into the anime side of things. But if you watch, current wrestling like Raw or WWE or whatever, you know that they're like writing storylines and drama and crafting new personas and characters all the time. It's like the in the DNA of wrestling.
There are a lot of wrestlers who are fans of anime. Those two worlds, they do run parallel.
They do well, it's not even just that. It's more how it felt like the anime side of storytelling took over for at the very least, I would argue about 50% of this show feels more anime inspired than wrestling, only because of the training that Andy goes through, where she has to do like perfect punches and fight and encounter like a bunch of really quirky side characters and such. For example, the Beef Puncha family, family of butchers and wrestlers, with the patriarch being voiced by Clancy Brown, who plays Mega Beef Puncha. And it's fun. It's like this, like along the way, Andy does encounter other characters, like her mentor, Aunt P, who was once the legendary Queso Poblana, a famous wrestler from back in the day, who's voiced by Rolanda Watts. On Andy's journey, she encounters Mikey Beef Puncha, a pacifist, extremely muscular boy. Like the juxtaposition of his personality and the physical appearance, it's like jarring. But it's like a play on the gentle giant story trope of characters. And TK Weaver does a really good job playing Mikey as like the innocent bystander, like pacifist character. And then, of course, Andy also runs into Craig, voiced by Paul Castro Jr., who plays the con man. He's not really a wrestler. He doesn't inspire to be one. He's just trying to grift through the world of wrestling, who just happens to be,
He's Aunt P's nephew, so he has connections, or so he says.
yeah, exactly. Throughout the show, you will just see that's not always the case. Andy encounters many wrestlers. Like I said, the Beef Puncher family, the what are they called? The first group of opponents, the Perm Gang.
The Perm Gang.
Oh, it's like a perfect encapsulation of anime and wrestling because, of course, you're an anime fan. You gave Immaculate the what is that show that our Fresh Takes host really likes?
Oh, Gurren Lagann.
Yeah, Gurren Lagann, because Immaculate has the Gurren Lagann glasses. And a lot of these personas move into more anime style exaggeration and inspiration. Like there's just, if you've seen like any battle show like Metabots or honestly Ultimate Muscle, then you know what to expect with kind of the quirky wide array of characters. They even go to a town where the husband and wife team there basically separated both sides of the town through either arm workouts or all the power comes from the toe and leg parts of wrestling. By the way, the couple that run this town, Ruff, is voiced by Dana Snyder, and Tumble is voiced by Jodie Carly Seal, and I thought they did very well playing probably the most pathetic duo of parents, probably up there with some of the worst parents in animation.
Oh, easily.
But I'm digress. I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves. But it is funny how much some of the wrestling like leaks into the anime DNA, especially with the old fashioned workout tapes from Star Mustache, who, by the way, is voiced by Bill Farmer.
That's great.
And he's just like, well, here we're going to do an ankle grab. My partner here, big and tall Jerry, is going to make sure to show you how it's done. Like, very like if Bob Ross was in the wrestling ring before the whole like 80s and 90s era of wrestling happened. And of course, there are plenty of references, memes, and characters that look like they would belong in completely different games. Like the Fedora twins, like who are these polar bears wearing ties, suspenders, and hats. Kind of look like the polar bears from Ice Climbers. Goldie, a owner of a bar that a lot of ex wrestlers or lower rank wrestlers hang out in, is basically Samus without the helmet. It's just a power armor. And I don't know if you recognized it, but during the either the ninth episode or the eighth, when they're like at the beginning of the festival thing near the end, and they're trying to find a wrestler to go against Andy, it was so out of nowhere. But the Stonks meme,
Oh, I think I missed that, but wow.
like it showed up, and you could, like I said, if you look very closely, if you are in for the overall anime wrestling online world soup that this show is, then you'll recognize everything. And there's even like this bird woman who's played by Lauren Lapkus. Man, y'all give Laura Lapkus more work. She is great. And
She is.
I'm just saying that because it just seems like she keeps getting all these projects that are like not good enough for her. And she is so much funnier than like most of the people in the projects that she's in. I'm not saying The Wrong Missy is a great movie, but she's the best part about that movie. But the overall voice cast is very good for this. Sydney Michaela is very likable as Andy. Like we said with Rolanda Watts playing Aunt P or Queso Poblana, TK Weaver as Mikey, and Paul Castro Jr. as Craig. They have a good dynamic with Aunt P being the cynical retired wrestler who really wants to see Andy fail, but mostly like at first you just think she's being a curmudgeony old person, and or at the very least, if the show is able to survive, is not the best tutor or mentor. She just drops Andy into the deep end and expects her to either, well, to pretty much fail.
Pretty much.
A lot of like the first half is that like the gathering of the friend group and the journey to pass Aunt P's test to do 10 perfect blows. And while this is a mostly action comedy focused show, it does have good commentary and lessons. Like how, as badly as Craig wants to cheat the system, cheating the system can sometimes, bring consequences to you. The heartbreak, like when my soul dropped when you think that they found a way to cheat the perfect punch or the perfect strike machine, only for the perfect strike machine to instead to reset at 0 instead of the one that was there.
Oh, that was one of the first moments where I'm like, oh, yeah, they can't cheat their way out of this one.
It's interesting because a lot of shows would be, or at least a lot of shonen anime would say like, oh, she found her own way early on. So then we can get to the good stuff, the wrestling and the action. But the show is more about the character drama and the development. Not to say that there's no fighting. I mean, this is a wrestling anime show. There's plenty of action. It just puts character first. Not that other shows of its kind don't, but there's definitely more of an emphasis on character and story over just constant flashy fight sequences.
One thing I like about Andy's journey in this show is there are no easy solutions. That's why the last episode is so satisfying because she had to put in the work to get to where she ends up.
Exactly. It's not going to hold your hand and say, oh, Andy's going to get it right every single time. No, because there are pretty much three separate story arcs in these 10 episodes. There's the beginning and the result of we can't cheat our way through this. Then there's the village arc of the two warring parents and the drama that happens with Birdie, who is voiced by Anjali Kunapaneni, who plays a character who kind of looks like if like Edward from Cowboy Bebop had more of a Spike Spiegel persona and look compared
Oh,
to,
I can see that in the hair.
yeah, like I said, there are blunt and also very subtle references to anime throughout this whole thing. Honestly, it's funny how we talked about a movie with Spellbound, how it tries to attempt to tackle the arguing parents' possible divorce storyline and how it fumbles it because it doesn't commit to the bits. Where Rough and Tumble are so ego driven, so stubborn to be like, oh, I have the superior technique to not just divorce because it just would have been healthy, but also how their constant arguments from them really put an emotional toll on Birdie, who becomes like the very last second twist villain of the bunch. Because even if she was trying to do her best to put the war between the two to a to a standstill, they still wouldn't stop fighting. And then that just sends Birdie over the edge because listen, it's okay to just break it off, to separate, to divorce, to say it's over because the constant arguing can do a lot of mental damage to your kid. And I think the whole story bit here with Invincible Fight Girl is handled better here than in Spellbound.
Yeah, I would agree. Not only is it causing so much damage to her, but it's literally causing damage to the rest of the town with their constant fighting, forming two rival gangs, and things just escalating completely out of control.
And it's interesting because a lot of this show has family dynamic drama. Like at first you have Andy's parents, Herb and Trish Smith, voiced by Angela Lakita Moore and Calvin Winbush, who I thought were great parents. I wish we got to see a little more of them. I love when they're like introducing Andy to her grandfather's suit. And it's just like, so was everyone a rectangle back in the day? And he's like, people were built differently, which true. You put on one of those old fashioned like office suits, it's like, what the heck is was everyone built of back then? Then with Mikey Beef Puncher, who did not want to do actual wrestling, he liked the commentation, he liked the commentary, he liked the the analytics of it all instead of the actual physical violence, where that rubbed against his father wrong because his father was like, "You're a beef puncher, and you're going to be a wrestler no matter what." And you see like the disconnect of Mega Beef Puncher and how he treats his sons compared to how Andy is with her parents, and then of course with Birdie and her troubled home life with rough and tumble and such. I just think that's really cool. And of course, also spoilers, the Perm Gang does return as the final conflict within the first season. And hopefully this is one of many seasons for this show. You could literally make this Cartoon Network's answer to a shonen franchise
You really could.
because it's just like all the quirky details, all the super moves you can do. If they wanted to, they could try to guest star some actual wrestlers, which do you know how over the moon they would be? Have y'all not seen how like some of them will dress up like they're from Dragon Ball and such?
Yep.
They would probably love it. They'd probably be paid more to do so than what the actual wrestling industry pays them, but that's another topic for someone a little more educated in that. But then, like, the final family connection drama was with the Perm Gang, where they grew up on the streets, they lived a rough life, and then Immaculate what basically took charge and said, you know what, we're going to become the strongest wrestlers out there. Nobody's going to get in our way. Nobody's going to look down on us. And it's interesting to see the drama that happens from the first time you see them to the next time, and how Immaculate at first, his head was not in the game, and how the loss really brought him down in a very like low point.
Another recurring theme is how different characters deal with loss. The one thing they all have in common is they don't take it well.
Even when some people win, like Brandon Beef Puncher, the freaking names on the Beef Puncher kids. It's so funny. There's Marv Beef Puncher, Miles Beef Puncher, Martin Beef Puncher, Mark Beef Puncher, and then
M. Brandon.
Brandon. You ran out of M names, so you just had to shove an M in front of Brandon to make up for that fact. Listen, they're butchers first. Even though M. Brandon becomes a very likable side character, like a good. If this got a second season, there'd be a rematch between Andy and M. Brandon because that's just how it sets up. It's like how in Dragon Ball, one season ends with Goku fighting Tien and losing, but then in the next season, the one right before Dragon Ball Z, Goku rematches against Tien and beats him. You can see where they could go with a lot of these. And I wanted to see more of the side characters. Like, I mean, again, that's kind of the problem when you aren't allowed to see the other side characters and such.
When you only have 10 episodes to tell all of this story, you lose a little bit of the fat.
And like, listen, I know a lot of battle anime can just drag on and on and on, especially if they take place in one location, like Kengan Ashura. But you can get over that with expanding on the world around them and making the characters interesting. There's more flashy looking characters than interesting characters. Even though I love characters like Pampa, voiced by Fred Tatasciore, who is just who what could have been a wrestler but kept getting stuck to everything because he's a cactus person. Don't ask about how a lot of this world has like animal people and such. It doesn't matter. Don't explain it. Like, as for the action, it sticks closely to wrestling. I think sometimes it feels a little mixed martial arts than wrestling.
I noticed that too. Like, it does feel like a bit more like mixed martial arts, but that's also just a very anime thing to just throw all different styles into one.
I mean, it's not like there's no bits of wrestling in MMA, but a lot of these were more like a lot more punches and kicks than pins, slams, and all the stuff that you know from actual wrestling and such. I think that's probably my one minor issue with it. Because here's my question: do you think this leans too much on the anime influence, or do you think it's pretty 50-50? Because I think it's more 60-40, where 60% leans in on the anime story devices and the flashy action and such.
I think it's a little bit more even than that. Like, yes, it does have a lot more of the anime hallmarks, but and there's only so much you can do with a show about wrestling without actual involvement from either WWE or AEW. They went as far as they could by combining the two worlds.
I just feel like I wanted to see more wrestlings, less of the anime at points, because there are definitely moments where the wrestling and to see tactical and science behind it happens more, but it doesn't happen enough. And I think a lot of that is because, again, it's a more story focused production. And even though they do try to do some fun jokes and such, like what was the shoe wrestler name? I forgot what his name was.
I forget, but he was like his whole thing is like he's just a guy in a shoe costume.
He's essentially the, like, if you're a Punch Out fan, he's the Glass Joe of wrestling. He's the one, like, if this was Punch Out, he would be the first one you fight and then win easily. Even though in Punch Out lore, there is someone who actually lost to Glass Joe, which is like, you're a bigger wimp than Glass Joe because you lost to Glass Joe. I think even Glass Joe would be like, how did I win? I'm sure if they get a second season, they would find a way to make the shoe a more dynamic and funny character than just, oh, I'm really pathetic and such. And they threw in at the very last bit of these 10 episodes more side characters. And I wanted to see a little more of those side characters, but of course, they are not in the show a whole lot. And that's a shame. It's enticing to see in the future, like if this does get a second season, if they do more wrestling matches, to see them bring them back. But otherwise, like how the beginning meets the end, where the rematch between Immaculate and Andy works out very well, even if it does come from Craig being the worst and having to talk to his black market dealer, what's his name? Mildew, voiced by Aaron like Hendry, who, I mean, dude, the guy's a literal bug, a literal roach on society. Why
Yep.
the hell do you think you can trust him? Because Mildew's like, oh yeah, I got some new bodyguards. And then he takes it Craig to them. And he's like, see, this is Craig. He's a cop. It just bails. And oh, that was so funny. Like this, I wouldn't say this is my favorite comedic show of 2024, but I think it's one of the funnier shows.
When the jokes hit, they hit bullseyes.
And the action is just so dynamic. Like really good like shot composition and how they set up the fights. And you feel the punches, the kicks, the grabs, the throws. It's very cool. It's one of the more action-packed shows I can think of from this decade, which seems to be kind of a dying art right now, where we're in that zone of we're not going to have many action shows because what the studios want are more comedy driven, non-story driven stuff.
You just kind of have to appreciate them when you get them. I'm so happy that we got this and Gentry Chow versus the Underworld in the same year.
That was a great show. And I think this one's really good too. I would love to see more of this. And if Cartoon Network and was given the ability to do so, you can make a lot of merchandise with this. You can make video games, action figures. Like half of wrestling is merchandise. It's like the what was the old catchphrase for like the moral of the story at the end of every Transformers episode? It was like, in knowing is half the battle. The nebulous other half. It's like, what's the other half? And it's like, uh merchandise? Buy our toys? Because I mean, come on. This is a lot of franchise potential. I want to see more of this world. I want to see more of these characters. I want to see them follow up on arcs for like Birdie and Brandon and Tumble Rough and the Perm Gang. The Perm Gang would be like this delightful Team Rocket ish, like team of like villains who try to like ruin the day, but then Andy and her friends stop them and such. There's so much franchise potential here, and yet there's this looming dread that this might not make it past its first season, all because we have people who run Hollywood right now who seem to be allergic or hate the fact that they have to spend money.
Yeah, I don't love that.
Like, yes, the stilted animation at points mimics anime, but that's like a style choice. That's not a production like limitation. And the characters are already very expressive, so it's not like the animation was getting kneecapped and such. It's the fact that we have people who are from like the Wall Street side of things, not people who love art and understand that we need to keep budgets at bay, but you still make things. It's people who just say, well, this wasn't as big as SpongeBob during its first like 30 minutes. Let's cancel it. And I feel like that's my worry about this show. It's going to get canceled unless people really, really fight for it and really support it. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe there's like another quote unquote 10 episodes for a second season and such to wrap it up. Or I would hate for this to just kind of end, all because of the final encounter with Auntie P and the owner of the wrestling federation that she used to be a part of, who just also happens to be the narrator of this show. And he's played by the always amazing Keith David. And Keith David brings like a warmth to the narration and like an intensity, but it's also cool to see him play a villain who is very passive and underhanded. He like has complete control of the room in front of him, and he does not let anyone get in his way.
If you're gonna cast this type of character, who we don't even really know that much about, but he's introduced at the last minute. You give him the voice of Keith David, and his voice honestly fills in a lot of the gaps.
I would love to see them expand on that. I want to see more of the backstory of why Queso Poblana. I want to see what happens. I want to see more, and not just because it's like, well, they didn't do much with that premise like Secret Level did and faltered with. I want to see more because this is a good show. It's got great action, good comedy, likable characters, fun designs. There's so much that is left unchecked about Invincible Fight Girl, and I want to see it feel more fleshed out with another season. I'm not saying this needs to be like 20 seasons deep. It's just you could do a lot or as much as you want with this show and give it like a 4 season run or something like that. And it would feel completely satisfying.
That's kind of how I feel. For as much as they packed into like these first 10 episodes, I still think this show has potential to keep going. And Who knows what the status is because even though this season wrapped up in December, we haven't heard any sort of updates one way or another. So I'm hoping for the best. And at the very least, I'm glad that at the very least this first season made it to the finish line.
Honestly, that's the sad part. It's like the best that most shows can do these days, because Hollywood is being so freaking fickle, is make it past the finish line. No matter how badly it ends, at least it makes it past the finish line. And that sucks. You used to be able to let shows live and die on their own accord. And now that's not possible. And that sucks. That really absolutely sucks. It just makes me hate who these people are who run these companies that are trying to homogenize the flow of art production, or the production of art. And that means good shows are going to get caught in the crossfire. It's like what happened with SWAT cats. Oh, the like a school shooting happened. I think it was Columbine. And instead of blaming anyone else, they went after violent shows and video games. And unfortunately, SWAT cats, which used highly fictional and fantasized weapons that you could find nowhere in sight, unfortunately got caught in crossfire because of that. It's unfortunate. And I just feel like something's bad's going to happen with Invincible Fight Girl. And I hate to say that, like, because of how I felt when I went to Animation and Film and saw the first episode. It's like the creator either couldn't be there for long, or there's just something else going on where you're just like, no, I'm not doing that Q&A, because I would have loved to have heard what he had to say and how he crafted the show with his team. I just want to see, like I said, give him more money, let him and his team make more shows. I want to see more Invincible Fight Girl. Give us a season 2.
Yes, please.
So, because unfortunately, not every show that's made during this time period gets the same treatment as, say, a lot of stuff based on existing properties. For example, Creature Commandos, based off of the DC comic of the same name, created by and like I think, yeah, oh yeah, Jesus, James Gunn did actually write all the episodes. I thought that was just kind of a guild credit thing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
nope. He just wrote the entire first season, and I'm assuming he also wrote season two as well.
We'll have to say. I hope so, because what I like about, from what I've seen of Gunn, I like a lot of his like strategies. We're not going to greenlight a movie until we have a script, and it's a good script. And we're going to take times with all these DC projects, and how, and I think we said this last time, that he said that continuity between the shows and movies are going to be very like pick and choose, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, his his stance on continuity is honestly pretty refreshing when it comes to like especially compared to the MCU. He's like we're 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 not story building, we're world building. We're creating we're building a universe where all these characters exist, but it's not like they're telling the same kind of story, like the Infinity Saga from the MCU.
Well, and see, that's the problem. It's like right now, like, so, I mean, it's interesting to look back now exactly at what happened to both series with the DC cinematic universe and then the MCU, where the MCU was going like strong, and then the DC universe was like, we have about a decade worth of stuff to catch up to, or at least 5 years worth of stuff to catch up to. We're going to rush it out. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or if it's good. We have to compete with Marvel, which is like, listen, I know you want to make your own version of the MCU or as big of a pop culture franchise and juggernaut as the MCU. Trying to make what they did and trying to like copy and paste that, it's not going to work. It's like the moral at the end of Invincible Fight Girl. Fight Girl could not do the perfect strike the way that Queso Poblana does. She had to do it her way, her own twist on the move. And with DC, they were, whether you like these movies or not, were stumbling left and right a little with how the stories were being made, the connective continuity of it all. And then, of course, Black Adam happened and just put a real nail in the coffin. Like, okay, let's bring James Gunn on. We'll see how this works. And so far, at the very least, what James Gunn has done has made me more excited for comic book stuff than what Marvel has done recently, because I'm sure I would love some of the stuff that Marvel is releasing, but it's homework. I'm sorry, that's just what it is. Oh, we're going to connect the shows and the movies together. And it says it's too much. It's exhausting. And the quality is not justifying the commitment. Here, with what we have so far, which is essentially like the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, and Creature Commandos, it feels refreshing. It's like, oh, someone said, why don't we focus on character?
And
And
they're
like
doing exactly that.
and listen, I know how weird it is to say that when Creature Commandos is just another ragtag group of ne'er do wells that James Gunn just so happened to know how to work with those kind of like group of rejects come together and make their own team kind of dynamics. I mean, we saw that with Guardians of the Galaxy. But each team, I think, is handled differently. Like, I would say Guardians of the Galaxy is a much different dynamic than Suicide Squad. And I would say Creature Commandos is a different dynamic than Suicide Squad, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they their own quirk, their own secret ingredients, and I think what works about this team is they're all damaged in their own ways.
Well,
And
before we get to that, Mike, if I was new to this concept of Creature Commandos, how would you describe it to people who have never heard of Creature Commandos?
so let's see. How would I describe Creature Commandos? Think of like the Monster Squad. Like these are like your like a ragtag team of misfits. Like you got the Bride, you got GI Robot, Weasel, Dr. Phosphorus, Nina Mazursky, and Rick Flag Sr.
And the unofficial new member of the team, Eric Frankenstein, which we'll get to in a little bit. Essentially, how I would describe it is Creature Commandos was basically if you mix Suicide Squad, but with the Universal Monster catalog, and throw in some Hellboy ish like type characters like GI robots and such, where it is another team like Suicide Squad where Amanda Waller tells them, hey, go take care of this or I'll blow up your necks and whatever. But I would say they're probably even more covert than Suicide Squad. Because at least Suicide Squad is like, hey, we're going to throw villains at a bigger villain threat. And here, Creature Commandos seems like it's there to take care of whatever could be like on Amanda Waller's to-do list.
Yeah, basically. So the mission for this first season is they're traveling to Pakistan to deal with Princess Alana.
Right. And what happens is that she gets pretty much it, well, as far as we know, is put into the crossfire between Circe's plans to take over Themyscira, which I do think it's kind of funny how much the Themyscira stuff drops by the wayside. And I'm not saying this because of everything that's going on or has gone on with the live action Wonder Woman stuff. And who knows when exactly Creature Commandos was put into production. I do wonder if the original plot was going to be more about Themyscira than, oh, Circe just tricked a bunch of incels to pull a January 6th riot and they're going to go storm Themyscira, even though, like, listen, they might have guns, but Themyscira is full of incredibly powerful Amazons. I don't think those guys have a chance.
No. So
Like
you're
even if they made it, they would be like crushed in an instant. Where they're like, "Yeah, I'm done."
can't enter an island of warriors and expect to be victorious.
No, it's just funny. I mean, what do you think about the whole fact that the Themyscira thing drops off to be more about like Circe's visions about exactly what Princess Ilana Rostovic's actual goals are.
I think Circe was always supposed to be a red herring. Like, yeah, throwing in references to Themyscira and other DC world building stuff, that's great. This show has done a great job of like world building and dropping in important locations and characters without necessarily drawing too much attention to them. We'll get to the Dr. Phosphorus episode in a little bit. As far as Circe and the Sons of Themyscira, still can't believe
God.
that's what they're called. In hindsight, that was always supposed to be like a red herring.
Compared to
To
what the actual plot was. Granted, I still get a huge kick out of the line read of no, I think it was the incel son who was voiced by Tony Cavallero, where he's like, they get amazing waterfalls. Why don't we get amazing waterfalls? We deserve amazing waterfalls too. And it's like, God dang it. I do think it turned out to be a much more interesting plot when you realize it, like you said, Circe is the red herring because after they do the whole vision thing, she drops out. Like she's never mentioned again. And I'm not saying this as like a gotcha, James Gunn. It's like, no, she's back in jail. Like, what else is she going to do? She wasn't going to break out and go back to the country where the commandos are going to get revenge. It's just she did her part of the plot. That's what needed to be done. Because you then had to find out what Ilana was actually planning when you find out that what was her name? She's a known character within I think Wonder Woman's side of the universe. And
McPherson, voiced by Stephanie Beatrice.
yeah. And then you find out that the actual McPherson was killed and has been played all along by Clayface, who is voiced by Alan Tudyk. But my friend kind of assumes that this is a different Clayface compared to the one that we know more of, especially with Alan Tudyk playing both. remind me if I'm wrong or if I'm correct, that there are two different canonical clay faces.
There's actually a couple different clay faces, but I
But
don't
this
think.
is not the one Harley Quinn, so just to be clear. Like, I'm not connecting Harley Quinn's Clayface to this
Oh
one.
yeah,
It's
no,
just,
just because Alan Tudyk plays both versions of the character, like this is definitely not that Clayface.
man, what a weird tonal shift that would have been if they brought in the more comedy driven one. But it turns out to be like this whole internal plan of Ilana wanting to basically, like, for no one to really see what her actual plans were. But the way the show is structured, as we build up to this whole twist, we have three things going on, like throughout each episode. We have the main plot of having to deal with this country. We then have Eric Frankenstein, who is voiced by David Harbour, trying to get back and, you know, reunite with the bride, per se. And we'll talk about him in a moment because I have a lot to say about Eric Frankenstein. And then every episode, or almost every episode, has a tragic backstory for our characters. The first one we see Bride, where she was or brought to life to be, the bride of Frankenstein, and the soon to be like father daughter dynamic that then turned sexual, which it's like ill Victor, freaking ill.
Yeah,
Even though like Victor is played well by Peter Serafinowicz, and just I mean like it was so like he's being really doting on her. Are they going to? Oh, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
they're having sex. And understandably, Eric is like, "What the hell? I'm going to kill you," and kills Victor, and then turns the dynamic between Bride and Eric into a century-long battle of Pepe Le Pew.
yeah. Basically,
And then the next backstory we learn about, and I have to say, I think this is the most tragic backstory of the Creature Commandos. I think GI Robot has the saddest backstory. Like, that's my take. I think he does. I think it's him and Dr. Phosphorus have the saddest backstories. Even though I think Nina, they all do. Not it's not. Well, hell, Weasel gets an entirely different recontextualized version of his backstory from the Suicide Squad movie.
that one might actually be my pick for like the most tragic because Weasel can't talk. He can't communicate what actually happened that night with the children.
Well, like at first, like the movie kind of implies that he killed a bunch of kids or he was maybe not a pedophile. And then it's like, oh, he befriends the kids. And then the whole misunderstanding of what happened that night. It was like really heartbreaking for the joke character. And that was like so interesting to me. Just how they recontextualized and made you feel for a character who is mostly there for laughs. I mean, he's one of the characters. I mean, a lot of these characters have their own sense of humor and such. Like GI
Remember,
Robot.
yeah, I
Well,
was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, remember what you said about his sort of one note joke about killing Nazis?
Yeah, no. So basically, what happens with GI Robot is he goes through his own version of how the U.S. military industrial complex treats its veterans. After the war is over, he is discarded. He is examined and then used to make, well, who knows if we're going to see him in the future, but yeah, his AI intelligence is used to help make the metal men, and then he is discarded into some, like, as a knickknack piece of paraphernalia for war. He gets bought by this one character named Sam Fitzgibbon, who is voiced by Michael Rooker, who I have to say, it's so funny because of what we know what's about to happen with Sam. how Michael Rooker is just going to constantly play characters in James Gunn's DC universe who are just going to keep dying. I think that's funny because you can't play him as his character from the Suicide Squad movie. He's dead. And now there's one random character. It's just like, hey, do we have a side character like who could get killed? Okay, Michael Rooker's there. Okay, let's bring him on. I mean, I'm so sorry. He might as well just be walking around with a red shirt, Star Trek style.
Basically.
And basically, what happens with GI Robot is that, like, he's so simple, but he has a yearning for connection because he wants to be with his battle buddies again, which were the oh, what were their names? I forgot. They show up in the Justice League
That
three
there's
parter,
the Easy Company.
and I don't know if the Justice League cartoon uses that name, but it's the same characters. And that's all he wants. He just wants to be with someone. Dynamic with Nina is so adorable where he's just like, do you want to go kill Nazis with me? And she's like, yeah, of course. And he's like, I have a friend that I can go kill Nazis with. And to see the actual heartbreak of GI Robot when he realizes that his friend who bought him and revitalized him was a Nazi. There's no way to tiptoe around it. They were Nazis. They called themselves a socialist party, but he murdered a entire small church of like I think 22 people, if I recall,
Something like
and
that.
then was sent to jail and essentially became part of the creature commandos because of that. And it just reminds me just all the stories you hear about like, yeah, I went to war and for my country and I came back, but my country didn't want me. And I think there's something so tragic about that for GI Robot. And I was really upset when he died at first. We'll get to that. And then we get the let's see. Yeah, then we get the Weasel backstory. And then we get the Eric Frankenstein backstory. And yeah, let's talk about Eric Frankenstein for a second. As many amazing characters that there are, who each like they all have their own moments, and I love every single moment. Eric Frankenstein might be the scene stealer of Creature Commandos.
A lot of it has to do with how great of a voice actor David Harbour is because he makes a meal out of every single line of dialogue. There is nothing in between. He only has two gears. He can only go from 0 to 60.
Well, he has two modes. He has I'm looking for my bride. I will murder anyone in my way who gets in my way, or adorable bromance with Rick Sr. That moment where they meet and there's a misunderstanding of who Eric and Rick were thinking of. Normally, I don't like to curse, but for my one time, I will for this episode. I don't think I got a bigger laugh from last year's shows than when Rick puts two and two together, where he's like, oh, you're talking about the bride. And Eric goes, who do you think I was talking about, you Dilfy piece of shit? Like, she's everyone's type, including you. I think this was from what I could tell from the interview and production side of things, I think this was like a James Woods getting cast as Hades situation where we're going to write Eric Frankenstein a certain way, and then David Harbour came in and found a way to make his pathetic simp personality so endearing and funny that they were like, oh, we have an entirely different direction we want to take this character.
I kind of love that because he's so well spoken, but he's also he's a well spoken moron.
And like there's such a juxtaposition of that where he's like he understands the powerful romance between Leo and Kate on Titanic, but completely misses the point of when Harry met Sally. They were so much in love that she had a powerful orgasm in the deli. And Rick is just like, I think you missed the point there. And of course he would. Eric has one note of romance, and it's got to be like the Hollywood way of romance. It's sweeping and epic. But yeah, of course he wouldn't understand one of the classic 80s rom-coms and how the scene was, oh, Billy Crystal can say he knows when a woman is faking it. Oh god, it's like his character is such an enigma. Like he's such a pathetic simp, like a loser, but he's also someone you don't want to mess with because he's, like 8 feet tall, made of roided out rage. I love that scene in episode, I think it was either 7 or 8. It was the Dr. Phosphorus backstory episode
Oh,
where
yeah.
he gets on the plane and he's just like, "Hi there, we're going to go." Like, and he starts speaking very eloquently, but also starts to threaten him, the pilot, with like, "Hey, we're going to go back to the country that they're going to, where my wife is, and you're going to go there and not even think a second thought about it. Got it?" Or that scene in the final episode, he's talking to someone and he's talking about how beautiful the bride is, and then he's also like, and my best friend Rick Flag knows what I'm talking about. I call him Rick. That's how close we are. And it was kind of disappointing that like they finally get back together and he's taken out of the episode. I want to see more. I want to see Eric brought back more into the plot because there's a lot of that plot that's going to drive, I assume, the second season. Because I feel like the Bride and Eric Frankenstein's drama is too juicy just to leave on the floor.
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to get back together or anything like that. I think it would
oh
be
hell
a
no.
very bad idea. No, it would be a very bad idea. But I feel like at one point, Eric Frankenstein is going to join the team.
I think that's ultimately how season 2 is going to end, with him fully part of the team. But for this first season, I love how his character was just kind of dancing on the side of like the main story.
Exactly. And it's not like his backstory is bad. I like his like. There's something very tragic about with the old blind woman, where he's very like blunt about what he's talking about. He cares enough for the blind woman for healing him, but not enough to not leave her alone. But he loves her enough, Bodana, enough to put her out of her misery so she wouldn't be alone, and then takes the dog with him. Like, I just thought that was kind of, there's a very interesting dynamic about how Eric interacts with people. And I think, well, for example, let's finally talk about Dr. Phosphorus. He's a very dry, sarcastic individual. He's not really like showing his face, metaphorically speaking, his true face. And I love the dry sarcasm that Alan Tudyk brings to him. I still find it funny that this is not the same villain from Batman Beyond, just because of the similarities.
Yeah.
And but like I think he also has probably either top 3 or top 2 tragic memories of how he played a scientist who teamed up with what's his name?
Rupert
Uh
Thorne.
yeah, Rupert Thorne for funding to make the cancer research possible because he's like, get rid of cancer and such. But unfortunately, you're dealing with Rupert Thorne, who, you know, still a crime boss, buddy. It's like, it's like what my parents always say, don't get involved with bad people because they'll do things you don't want to do, which includes killing his family and throwing him into a fly like situation where he becomes Dr. Phosphorus. And like, golly, could you imagine the trauma that's living inside him. It's like the dry sarcasm is like, well, a facade, a fake face that he puts on. Not that he has an actual face to put on, mind you.
It's definitely like that sort of defense mechanism. He's been through a lot in apparently it's been like 15 years since he got torn to shreds and turned into this metahuman.
You see what happens. He takes revenge. He kills the Thorn family. He takes over his companies. Yet he found solace when he was on the run, when he encounters a young girl. I mean, listen, you don't need me to tell you how good Alan Tudyk is as an actor. I mean, you could just see in all million things that he's been in.
Even in this show alone, he's playing like five different characters.
But I think outside of the Dilfy line read from David Harbour, my favorite line read from this show was when Dr. Phosphorus put down the small girl and he said, like, we were just, and there's that pause, pretending to fly. Really something you wouldn't expect from a demonic burning skeleton man. But that line read has so much heartbreak in it that I mean, like, he basically got the Rocket Raccoon tragic backstory of the Creature Commandos just because of the whole science experiment side of things. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think the one who gets the least amount of time to really be her own character is Nina Mazursky, who's great. Like, Zoe Chow is great as her, but you only get her tragic backstory at the very end. And I guess it's like, what was Amanda Waller expecting her to do? It's not like she's Aquaman. She can't control water or anything like that. She is a fish person who grew up originally as a human with organs, with her lungs on the outside of her body. And then, because of her dad's experiments, turned into a fish person who needs a helmet full of water to survive. What was Amanda Waller thinking she was going to be doing outside of the potential assassination attempt that ends badly? Like, I feel
Yeah,
bad.
that's a great point because at no point throughout this show has Nina she's been the pacifist of the group, the one to keep everyone honest. She was the moral compass, and yet for some reason, because there was an opportunity with a body of water, the bride had the bright idea to have her be the one to land the finishing blow.
And unfortunately, yeah, spoiler alerts, she dies, which I don't think she's permanently dead because I feel like that would be extremely terrible to make the pacifist character the only one who permanently dies. Like, I don't know. I just feel like that's wrong because she barely got to do much. She can't throw a punch. Like you said, she was there for more the emotional groundedness of the team, but she doesn't do a whole lot after that. And it's a shame. I'm not saying this to be like, oh, she's a terrible character. It's just more, what was Amanda Waller thinking? And I wish we got more of her instead of just what I wish she was handled better than what we got. Because it's really like the bride, Dr. Phosphorus, Weasel were doing a lot of the heavy lifting while Rick Flag gets baned by almost his back breaking and such and taken out by Clayface. And it just became like the bride show. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm not. It's just it works because the bride finds some humanity and kindness instead of just being a standoffish individual. But it's a shame that Nina had to for now die to make that happen. It had to happen, but with what happens in the in the final episode where you find out that the princess Ilana was going to be a bad person. I do kind of think it's interesting that they just let that happen. The bride shoots the princess, and then there are like no repercussions of it because of it. Or at least for now, there are no repercussions about it.
That's interesting, but if she is in fact supposed to be like, the villain of this first season, then obviously things kind of have to go in their favor because they're the protagonists, but I'm curious to see the larger implications of what happens to Pakistan.
It was just interesting because if the main goal of this first season was to be a like a realization of how morally gray the world is, then it succeeded. But if you wanted a more straightforward who the bad guy was, like story was, it kind of falls flat. But like I said, I think the main goal was just to show the creature commandos the outside world is just black and white.
That's exactly what the point of this series is like the world is not as black and white as some people assume it to be. Like the fact that the monsters are honestly more human than a lot of the human characters kind of says a lot.
Exactly. And the fact that these rejects of society are then the heroes, another just result of how this first season played out. And then it ends with the bride being the new leader of the creature commandos. I mean, it's weird. What's going to happen to Rick Flag Sr.? I know he's probably going to survive because you need to have the one human character amongst these oddities. But I don't know, man. He got the tar kicked out of him pretty well, even though he's played by Frank Grillo.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, going up against Clayface can't be like that's no bed of roses.
No, no, it's not. But yeah, at the end, you find out that the bride is going to be new, the new leader alongside Phosphorus and some other new members, Nosferata, Kali's, Weasel, a rebuilt GI robot, which I was so happy to see him back. I unfortunately got that reveal spoiled for me. So it's like I would have liked not knowing he was back. And apparently King Shark is back. Though in this version he is voiced by uh oh what was it?
The
Um
Dietrich Bader.
yeah, Dietrich Bader, which hey, I'm down for that. I love Dietrich Bader. And then of course, like because we knew he wasn't going to be out, Eric is okay. He Frankenstein is not entirely dead. Don't know how you would kill a 8 foot walking mass of corpses, but it wasn't the way that the bride did it. And man, I really do like the voice cast for this show. It's I know people would rather have, voice actors do these performances and not just a varying variety of celebrities. But I do like Frank Willow. I like Indira Varma. Sean Gunn pulls double duty as GI Robot and Weasel, which I think it's so funny because Weasel doesn't talk, but Sean Gunn, through whoever's voice directing, either James or from behind the voice actor says Charlie Adler was the voice director for the show, brought out so much emotion through just grunts and squeals from Weasel. Alan Tudyk is great. Zoe Chow, David Harbour. Like I said, I'm amazed that they got Viola Davis back. I wonder what her paycheck is like, considering that Amanda Waller is a big freaking deal. And they're like, hey, let's just hire an actress to come in for maybe like 3 lines. But I do like the fact that they don't, and we talked about this the first time, that they didn't just recast her.
Yeah, no,
But
I'm that's actually the thing I'm happy about with James Gunn's approach to the DC universe is he's thinking fourth dimensionally by casting people in animation who will also play these characters in live action. Like, for example, we know Frank Grillo's coming back in both Superman and in Peacemaker season two.
and we also got AG back as John
Economos.
Economos. Yeah, he was great. I loved his performance. And I loved at the end where he's just like, huh, so maybe Circe was right. She just manipulated a bunch of men. Men, am I right? Bride was just like, shut up. I liked Anya Shalatra as Circe. Maria Bakalova was great as Ilana. Julian Kostov plays both sergeants of Ilana, Alexei, and Sergei. I did kind of feel bad that Sergei had to die, and I was very much like Dr. Phosphorus. Oh man, I like that guy. Yeah, Stephanie Beatrice is here. Like, and we talked about Michael Rooker, Peter Serafinowicz. Linda Cardellini comes in as Elizabeth Bates, who is the lawyer and attorney for Weasel. Benjamin Byron Davis was really good as Rupert Thorne, just
Yeah,
very
he was.
menacing. Okay, different person. I was thinking he was Tucker from Tucker and Dale versus Evil, but no, different guy. We also got like Robbie Damon, who plays Little Sure Shot, Maury Sterling as Sergeant Rock. And even though there are definitely a lot of winks and nods to other DC characters, I'm glad that they don't take too much spotlight from the main characters. Because we see Dr. Will Magnus, who is again played by Alan Tudyk. We also see Paul Ben Victor, Derek Phillips, Arena Maliva. I did like the fact that during the Mortal Kombat gameplay, they actually did bring back Matthew Yang King and Daisuke Tsuji as Scorpion and Liu Kang.
That's cool.
Yeah, or that could just been archival footage, but who knows? Shulray Agdashlu, who plays Madame Giorov of the brothel that Bride and Nina take shelter in. I love her voice. I've heard her voice so many times, and whether it's live action or animated, and she just has like such a good presence to her
She
that.
does.
And then of course we have like Greg Henry, like Keith Ferguson pops up a couple times. Like a lot of great actors and such. A lot of a very good cast of people that they got. And the action is good. It's I mean, yes, it's a lot of superhero stuff, but it's a lot more grounded since everyone is not just zipping around with the ability to fly. It feels more tactile than like, oh, Superman could just blast through someone without blinking or like thinking about it and such. Kind of like he could go full Brightburn, if you know what I mean. Uh,
Yeah.
but here it's like, oh, they can all fly and stuff. So there's definitely more at stake, which is something that a lot of isekai fantasy authors can learn about. Stakes. These characters aren't invincible. They could and will die. Make me care about them. And they do a good job. And I love the visual look of the show. It might have the same rigid TV animation that a lot of other DC shows have, but the more comic book flashy designs helps it stand out. It's not just adjacent to Harley Quinn or a different take on Bruce Timm's art style. It feels like its own compared to other DC shows.
That's what I like about it. This isn't just like a show that happens to feature DC characters. This actually feels like it's in the DC universe.
It's like its own thing, and that's just great because that's what I want. If we're going to be a still getting a bunch of super stuff, and we will stand out. And I hope that these companies are willing to, let that happen and all that jazz. Really liked Creature Commandos. I think with this and Invincible Fight Girl, they came in very last second to become like two of my favorite shows from 2024. And obviously we were going to get a second season, or they were already working on a second season when they released season one, because animation takes forever.
Yep.
But I'm glad to see this working, and I'm sure they want to get James Gunn happy, so they don't like they're like, hey, listen, as long as you're making us money, do whatever. We'll just have to see how that all unravels. But yeah, I would love to see more Creature Commandos, and I want to see how, or if any of the new members, like how they play off of Bride, GI Robot, and Phosphorus and all that stuff. Like it'll be cool to see, because I think the Nosferatu and Collies were part of the original Creature Commandos, if I recall.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
like when Creature Commandos came out, it was very much like you got Frankenstein, Dracula, Medusa, and all that stuff, and like the Wolfman and such. So it's kind of interesting to see how it's like, okay, they're called the Creature Commandos, but only maybe one or two of them are actually creatures. But I digress. That's just being pedantic about the actual title of the show and the group. They didn't just want to do Suicide Squad 2. Let's just say that. Or Suicide Squad B. I can't wait to see more. I want to see more.
Yeah, definitely excited to see more.
And yeah, if you haven't seen it, it's all out on Max. And oh, before we go, the mic drops, the needle drops of the show.
Yeah,
There are only like a handful of people in the film world who know how to work with needle drops. And James Gunn is one of those guys. And the music throughout the whole show was wonderful.
I think probably one of my favorite is the use of operated boy in the GI Robot episode. I can't think of that song anymore without just immediately associating it with GI Robot flashback.
The band music that they get to play throughout the whole show, I think it's the fanfare Seo Carlia, and they do the opening music for Creature Commandos. It was just good. The music was just, the needle drops were wonderful. They felt thematic and important to each of the characters, and the tone on screen. Just like, man, James Gunn, I like his musical choices. I might have to download the playlist of of every song that played during the season, especially the coin operated boy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's but otherwise that's it for this episode. So I did say we were going to talk about Her Blue Sky, but next time we will save it for our big final January podcast where we talk about Dogman, The Colors Within, and Her Blue Sky. But next time we are going to talk about the state of indie animation, at least from our perspective. Just kind of a more laid back episode, because we are also, you know, going to be diving into the anime season soon. So make sure to be on the lookout for that.
But until next time, Cameron, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Cam's Eye View. I have my own website called camseyeview.biz, where I review animated films and shows from around the world, called The Other Side of Animation. I am a contributing writer at Media Magpies. And I have a Patreon at patreon.com/camseyeview. That's where you can find me.
And you guys can find me on various social media sites at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterbox.com/Coach K42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Blue Sky at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser, Consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/renegade pop culture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Animation. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.